Hi everybody. So I said that I'd show you how to marzipan and ice Christmas cakes. So we're using fondant icing, not royal icing. And the first thing you need to do is work out what tin you're going to use. So this is a 6-inch square tin with a loose bottom, which is very handy for fruit cakes. Also, when you bake your cake, you need to, before you even start thinking about icing, you need to decide on what board you're going to put it on. So I usually calculate a board which is 1.5 inches wider all the way around. If you see that, it's 1.5 inches wider all the way around the actual cake tin. So a 6-inch cake tin, 9-inch board, 9-inch square board. So to start off with, and we're going to actually ice the board. So we get the fondant icing and roll out your fondant icing as thin as possible. And the way to roll out your fondant icing is, even though we're doing a square board, we still try and roll it into a roundish shape. Depends on how it comes out, but sometimes it comes out a bit squarish, but it doesn't really matter as long as you have got a good thickness in your icing and it's average right through the actual piece of icing that you're doing. So also, when you're rolling out, don't use icing sugar, or use corn flour. And that's one of the reasons why today I'm wearing disposable gloves, because my hands are so dry with rolling out lots of icing, because I think I'm making 8 Christmas cakes this year. 8 Christmas cakes, yes. My hands get very dry, so see how long it lasts. I don't really like wearing the gloves, but it does help a little bit. Oh yeah, this is a really good rolling pin. It's not the usual type of rolling pin that you use, because I do have a nice wooden one at home, but this for icing cakes is absolutely fabulous. It's a piece of white drainage pipe. And the reason why I like it so much is because when you get your icing the right size, let's see if this goes on, just do it a little bit more. I'll show you in a minute why I like it so much. Let's just get this. So if you keep turning it so you get an even roll, if you know what I mean. That should be enough of that. So the reason why I like to use this is because when you put your icing onto your rolling pin, you can actually pick your fingers up inside the pipe, like that, you see. So it's very, very handy. So before you actually put your icing onto your board, you use a little bit of egg white. So you'll separate an egg and put the white in a little dish of some sort. And you just need to do the outside edge, because that's actually where you're going to put your icing, and I'll show you in a minute why. You want it to stick. You want your icing to stick onto the board, because I'm not doing very well here, but anyway, let's try again, because the board's sliding away from me. Try again. That's it. There we go. Right, so you want your icing to stick onto the board, but you don't need to have icing where your actual cake is going to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift the board up. I'm going to take the extras off like this with a very nice sharp knife. And obviously your offcuts you just reuse into whatever else you're going to make with the icing. So that's the board iced, and then I put on the base of the cake itself, the cake tin itself, like this, and just cut round it. Because where you've got your cake, you don't need icing at all, and you want your cake to actually stick to your board. Oops. So take that off. Take this centrepiece out. And there you have your ice board. And also, while you're making things nice and smooth, this is called a smoother. And yes, and I've just not. Yeah, so you'd get these from a cake decorating shop, or Amazon are very good for buying lots and lots of different pieces of tools. So that now needs to be left for at least 4 days, because you want it to be nice and hard. You don't want to be able to dent it, because at the moment I can just put my fingers into it and it'll make a right mess, and you'll have lovely thumbprints in it and all sorts. So you do it like, at least I tend to do, because I make so many, I usually have 4 weeks lined up for doing cakes. My first weekend is icing the boards and deciding what boards I need, etc., and doing all that. Then my following week is marzipaning. So I usually leave a week between each layer, as it were. Right, so that's your icing out of the way. So as a Blue Peter person, this is one I did earlier. So if you notice, I've done a little bit smaller square, but that's okay. So this has been done about 2 weeks now. It's got a bit marked, actually, travelling here today, so I might have to redo it. Your cake wants to sit in the middle of that. So going on to cakes, I make my own fruit cake. I have always made fruit cake. But you can buy fabulous fruit cakes from the shops that taste really nice. So if you're not a particular good baker, or you haven't got time to bake, then just purchase one. You know, it's not a problem. It's the time, it'll probably save you more time. Now then, if you notice this one, it looks a bit strange because I've actually cut the top off. And the reason why I cut the top off is because it was a bit raised in the centre, and of course you don't want it to have a lovely dome shape on the top, do you? You want it to be nice and flat. So I cut the top off and use my well, you want a nice flat smooth cake, don't you? Yeah, so you want it to be nice and flat, because unless you want hills on it. Yeah, no, and you can do hills on Christmas cakes. I've done that before, but you really want a nice smooth cake, don't you? A flat cake on the top. So, and I just put a little. This is apricot jam, and I've just warmed it, so it's. I'm going to just put a bit more hot water in. Just got it on in a pan. In a dish on a pan with some hot water in, just to melt it. So I put more apricot jam there, and this will help the fruit cake to actually stick to the board. And the reason why we use apricot jam is because it is one of the jams that has the least flavours. How can I put it? In that the flavours don't affect what you're actually cooking. Does that make sense? Or what you're making? Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't flavour. It won't particularly flavour the cake. If it does flavour the cake, it's only going to make it nicer. But you're using such fine amounts of apricot jam, it won't leave a horrible residue or anything. So you can see, if I show the camera, there's lots of dents and things in this cake that we don't particularly want. Now that's the bottom of the cake, and here we've got a funny shape here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to square it up a bit, and with marzipan, before we actually put any marzipan on, we're going to just cover the dents and make it a nice smooth cake. Now marzipan, I always buy you can make your own, because it's made with ground almonds and icing sugar and egg white. But I find it just as cheap and just as convenient to actually buy the marzipan, and I buy the natural coloured marzipan. I don't buy the one that looks quite yellow. But that's my choice, you know, I mean, it's up to you what you want to do. I like it to look as natural as possible. And here, I'm just actually sticking bits of marzipan in, little bits of dents and gaps. So I'll show you that. So there's a bit of a ridge in there for some reason. It must have been where the greaseproof paper was folded in the tin, and it's left a bit of a fold in it. I just need to keep that hot as much as possible. So this takes a little while because obviously we've got a bit of, it's almost like body filler, you know, on a car when you're doing body filling. No, not at all. Mind you, I must admit, somebody's bumped my Mini in a car park and I'm so cross, and it's like a real like point into the wheel arch, so I'm going to have to take my car and get it sorted. But, it's annoying when they don't admit that they've done it, you know, and it's obvious that they have done something and they've hit my car. But anyway, never mind. So you just carry on filling this, and you just have to make sure that you don't move your cake from the centre. So I've got this little tool here. This is really good. So I think I bought these a long time ago. I think I might have purchased them from Amazon, and there's like a full kit of tools that I use. That one, that's a molly stick. So there's like a fat end and a little end. Got two of those, and this is nice. It makes nice like scraping marks in it, and then there's another one that's cut. That's very good for making elephant trunks, that one. And then this is a little one that I use that makes smiles on Mary and Joseph. So there are all sorts of different tools and things that I use. And I use this, and it just pushes the marzipan into the gaps where there should have been fruit cake.
Are they expensive tools?
No, I don't think so. I think I bought that set. I think it was, so it's an ideal Christmas present. I think it was about $10.99 for the set, which, you know, yeah, it is. I think it is. I got lots of things for Christmas when I started doing cakes. I've been doing cakes for about 10 years, but I only do them when I can, because obviously with you working full time and etc., you can't always fit things in very well. And even now, going down to 4 days a week, I still can't fit things in because we're just quite busy. So you just keep on. I'm going to carry on doing this because I want to show you actually how to at least get a piece of marzipan right the way around the outside of the cake. This is definitely a bad shaped one, this. It's a shame because not usually turn out this bad. Right, so if I just leave that there for now, and I'll show you how to actually put a piece of marzipan on it. I'm not going to actually, if I was actually going to marzipan it and do the whole thing, we'd be here about 2 hours, and I don't think you'd appreciate that really, would you? So again, marzipan, you just like soften it in your hands and make it pliable, and you roll it out on corn flour again. Make sure you haven't got any Christmas cake or fruit cake or anything like that in your work area, because you don't want little bits of fruit really, or bits of brown fruit cake in your marzipan. Now then, to get this the right thickness all the way around, I do cheat a little bit. So I'm going to make this a little bit more so I can get it round the corner. that's more to work with now. So to get it the right thickness, I actually use these, what do they call them? These are number 3, and I think they're pastry sizes. So I usually use number 3 for my marzipan. So to get the marzipan the right thickness all the way around, I just put them either side of my marzipan and I roll that way. So that is the same thickness all the way across. Cut the thick end off because obviously we want to have it a reasonable length that you can actually cope with. So, but you're going to reuse that marzipan, so don't throw it away. And metal rule as well. No good plastic one, you need a metal one for this because you've obviously got a sharp knife and you've got metal against metal. If you use a plastic one, you end up cutting your plastic rule, and that's not much fun. And then you've got little bits of plastic everywhere. So, and then also, so you want the right width of marzipan, put your metal rule on the board, and that is 2 1/4. So if you just mark 2 1/4 from that straight edge, that's what I've just cut, 2 1/4 there, 2 1/4 there, and then put my rule on with the 2 marks that I've made. So that should be the right depth to go on your cake. So the next bit is to actually put your apricot jam again, but this time put it on your marzipan. And get it right up my arm. That makes it the best way. So to get it onto your cake, you put it there, and there, and there. So and just use your smoother to make sure that it sticks. That's it. So I'm just going to show you this half, if you know what I mean, so that you can see. I won't do the other half as now. So that is your marzipan, and then I'd put another piece on this side, and then I'd put my top on. So we want to do this one in just one piece if we can, because then we won't have any more joins in it. So use my pieces of timber again, so I get the right thickness again. Just cut off the chunky ends. And we said it was 2 1/4, wasn't it, the height? So just give myself a straight edge. If you have somebody who's allergic to almonds, nuts, any kind, and you still want to, but they still like a fruit cake, you can actually just do a very thin layer of fondant icing first, just to like seal your cake before you put your main layer on. And so you perhaps do it just a little bit thinner than this that I'm doing today. Because there's nothing worse than you doing a lovely cake and then saying that, sorry, they can't eat it because they're allergic to nuts or almonds. Yes. And I had no idea, and I was really upset because I'd done something that they really liked and they couldn't eat it. Do you know what I mean? So and this is where you have to be careful that you don't get the apricot jam on your clothes. Yeah, I have. Right, so hopefully this should go right round now. The cake, yeah. Oh, fabulous. So just got a little bit of an overlap there, so just use a nice sharp knife and cut down. So your smoother again, and make sure your joint is smooth. There, not there. So there you go. You've got one marzipan cake round the sides, and then we'll just do the piece on the top. Right, so obviously now we put the marzipan on, the cake is a little bit bigger. So when we actually cut the shape of the marzipan for the top, we want to use the outside edge of the cake tin. So I'll just soften my marzipan up a little bit more. It's quite cold actually. I don't buy my marzipan from a certain shop. I just buy what's the cheapest, and it's just this natural marzipan. I have in the past made my own when I was just making one cake. It's more convenient to buy it because obviously you've got to make sure that you've got your egg whites in and your ground almonds and icing sugar. It doesn't take long particularly. It's just that unless you've got a mixer, it takes a while. You can't make it by hand, you see. So, well, you can. I used to make it by hand because I've only had a mixer this last couple of years. So, right. Mother-in-law, some friends, Heather's mother-in-law, us. I just make them, if people that I've known over the years and they say, oh, they love my cakes, oh, I'll make one for my sister-in-law and she's gluten-free, so I'm making a gluten-free one for her. I have a list at home. I have to tick them off to make sure that I have made them a cake, because I've got to the stage where I've made too many and I've ended up giving them away because I've miscalculated. Definitely, yeah. I'd be mortified if I'd missed somebody out and they were expecting a cake. Oh, I'm making one for my sister as well. So I was supposed to be making my sister's wedding cake this last October, and of course it got postponed, so hopefully she'll be getting married next year, but we'll see. I like doing cakes, but I don't really have a lot of time, so that's why I don't publicise it that I make them, because I don't want to let people down, and I don't want everybody to presume that, yes, of course I'll make a cake when, work will get in the way and I won't be able to complete what I want to do. And also it's cost as well. People don't realise that cakes are quite expensive, not to make particularly, but it's the time that you spend titivating them and making them look nice. And so when you get charged £80 for an 8-inch sponge cake for a birthday cake from a shop, then I think that, to me, that's quite a reasonable price. But other people will think that's extortionate. But yeah, spend a lot of time. So just before I put the apricot jam on, that's a little bit big, but I'd rather have it a little bit big than not big enough. So. My apricot jam is drying up, but we'll manage. That's a little bit more. So always use apricot jam. Don't use marmalade, even though it's a similar colour, because marmalade has a very distinct taste. Not at all, no. So if somebody says, I don't like apricot jam, it doesn't matter because you won't taste it. Right, so that has more or less I'm going to get a Stanley knife on the blade. I forgot my scissors, but Stanley blade will do. So if you just trim it off to the edge of your upstand. Smoother again, and that's quite a good finish considering I've rushed it really. I usually take for hours doing these and wrapping about, and that's quite good that for me.
So does it need to be like super perfect because the ice will come in?
Yeah, because if you don't get your underneath surface nice, it will show through on your top surface. So that's quite good. That I'm quite impressed with myself. That just make that join a bit better. There we go. So that's one marzipan cake. So you need to leave that now for a week for it to set, because if you don't and you want to ice it straight away, then you'll get the oils from the marzipan coming through onto your white icing, and you don't want that, do you? Because that will spoil your icing. So I usually leave mine a week, and then it's at minimum is 3 days, because your marzipan will be still quite soft for you to actually ice onto. So that's that one. So I'll just get my other one that I'm going to ice now. So this is one I did 2 weeks ago. And if you can see, there's a little bit of a brown mark there. That's the oils coming through from the fruit cake and the marzipan. So that's what you don't want to happen, really. If we'd ice straight away, that would actually come through onto your icing, whereas now, because it's set in the marzipan and that's hard, it won't actually come through at all. So we want to icing. So you can do your cake in any icing. I tend to do mine in white a lot of the time, but I have done them in red and I've done them in blue. But I just think a nice white Christmas cake is rather pretty. And we're actually using fondant icing, so it's quite easy to ice and roll out. If you want to do, I know years ago when I was at school, in the 70s, when I was at school, we actually made Christmas cakes at school, and we had to do royal icing. So royal icing is an art in itself, in that you do a layer a day and it sets. And it's a completely different art, and it's absolutely exceptional. People who do it are wonderful, and I would love to do royal icing, but this is fondant icing, which is quick and easy. So to do a royal icing cake, it would take you about 2 weeks to actually do your layers and let it set before you could do anything with it. So royal icing is hard, but not hard that you can't eat it. You do lots of ornate things with it. So I will use a little bit of royal icing to decorate around the edge of the cake, just to finish it off. Or sometimes I just put a ribbon round, but I sometimes do a scroll round or something like that. So, but I do cheat. I don't make my own anymore. I use another convenient pack. I use silver spoon royal icing sugar. Just mix it with water. And so if you want to do a royal icing cake where you do all the lovely soft peaks and it looks like snow, you can just get 2 boxes of this and make it and cover your cake and it's done. But I do like to do something a little bit different on my cakes. So just bear with me while I just get this warm, because you need to get your fondant icing warm and so it will bend and do things what you want it to do. You want it to be supple, and you can't ice a cake when it's not. So you just have to keep kneading it like this. I was doing that one before. So that piece I had before that I did the board with, I'm using that as well. So this is when sometimes if I'm doing a wedding cake and I've got a piece that's 3 times the size of this, because I'm doing like a 10-inch base layer, then James comes in very handy to actually knead my icing for me because his hands are a lot stronger than mine. I'm just going to put some more in. You want to cover a 7-inch cake, you want about 500 grams of fondant icing. If you're buying it, I buy the marzipan and icing sometimes from Lidl or Aldi if I just want to do a quick cake and they've got it in. That's the only thing, they don't always have it in. But obviously when I'm doing a lot of Christmas cakes like I am, I buy it from the wholesalers. And if I want to do a nice red cake with gold stars on, then I buy the ready coloured red icing.
Is there like a difference in taste?
No, it tastes exactly the same because the ingredients are exactly the same. So you can make your own fondant icing if you want. Make your own royal icing if you want. Yeah, if you just buy the pack and then just knead it and then roll it, it's a lot quicker, isn't it? Have you not? Have you done royal icing? So yeah. Sam, my son-in-law, is really good at cakes. He did, because we couldn't see Reuben for his 3rd birthday, and I was gutted because I had a Fireman's Sam already made for his birthday cake. Sam made him a fabulous chocolate cake and it looked scrumptious, and he did it so it was like a building site, and it broke it up at the side and it had all these sweets in it and things and these diggers in it. He bought the diggers, and Sam's really into Reuben's really into diggers, you see, so diggers on his birthday cake, thought it was fabulous. Right, I think that it's usually, it gets warm. Your fondant icing gets warm, so I've got something in that. Don't know what it is. So again, even if you're doing a square cake, you'd still roll it out in more or less a circle, just keep turning it. Yeah, I am actually, because in the past I've done thicker fondant icing, and James and I have found it too much. It's too sweet, and I don't think anybody would comment and say you've done your icing too thick if I've given them a cake as a present. So I just do it the same as what James and I like it now. So because we love our Christmas cake, because it's quite a rich fruit cake that I make. And obviously there's all the icing and everything with it, and marzipan, and then we have a slice of Christmas cake with a chunk of extra strong cheddar cheese, and that is a really nice combination. So you want to carry on icing, rolling out, which I am getting there. So the first cake I ever iced was Heather's wedding cake. Yes, I'd never done a cake before till Heather's wedding. And she said, "Mum, will you do my wedding cake?" And I went, "Yeah." And then they couldn't decide on what they wanted, how they wanted it decorating. So Sam wanted a traditional royal ice wedding cake, and I said I can't do that. I'm not doing, royal icing is an art in itself, and I can't do that. Heather wanted a very modern cake. So in the end, they just said they couldn't agree. So they said, "Mum, you just do what you want, and we'll be happy with it." So she got 4 wedding cakes. Yeah. Well, because there were quite a few people coming to our wedding, we did a fruit cake, we did a mocha cake, we did a lemon cake, and we did a vanilla cake. And I had a stand for all 4, and I did figures of Heather and Sam in the garden. Heather was sat under a pagoda and with her feet on a stool. So I did all the figures on it and everything. Right, so now I've rolled it out. You need to use your smoother and like polish it a little bit. And because you've been kneading it, you will have air bubbles in it. So your air bubbles will show. And that's the reason why I'm looking sideways and down, because I'm looking for air bubbles. If you see an air bubble, you just pop it with a pin. It's all very technical, this. So I think I've got one somewhere around here, I think. There. So you just pop it with a pin and smooth it over like that, and that gets rid of the air bubble. And that's how you get your nice, smooth, polished surface of your icing. Just like that. Now, can you see any air bubbles, Harry, from over there? Right. So it's all ready. So the next thing you need to do, and I've used my pastry brush, I've just realised, but anyway, we'll use one of these. So you want egg white again. And you just want a very, very fine coating of egg white on your marzipan. Don't pour it on and hope for the best, because your icing will just not stay on, and you'll end up with drips of egg white on the cake board, and you don't want that either, because it spoils the effect of your cake. You just do a nice fine coating all the way around. Right, that's your egg white done. And of course, this very technical rolling pin. So you fold it in half, pull your cake forward, lift it up, and put your icing on. That's the first bit. So it's nice and big. So you want a nice sharp knife now just to trim it down. There's nothing worse than trying to make your icing fit when it's too small. So I always make plenty, make sure that I've got plenty, and trim it as I go along. Because otherwise you would end up having icing thinner on one side of the cake than the other. So I'm just going to get the turntable because it makes it a bit easier. This is just a little bit easier, it just lifts it height for me as I'm working on it. So you want your smoother, and all you do is you press your icing down, but very gently, because you don't want to rip it. It will easily tear. It's even though it's quite soft and flexible, it will tear. So you just do it very, very gently. You have to take it off and start again. See, mine's tearing now. It's I've pulled it too tight, too quickly. So that's a bit better now. So can you see why I said to you need to ice your board about a week before you want to ice your cake? Because you're using a knife on your icing, and if your icing on your board was still wet, you'd just make great big holes in it as well. You've still got to be careful, don't get me wrong, but it makes it a lot easier. Pull the ice in here slightly, it's got a bit of a hole in it. So you just keep working your way around the whole time, making sure that your icing is nice and smooth and it's down to the board, and just trim off your excess. Doesn't matter if you've got a little bit of a gap at the bottom, because you can fill that in. You can either fill it in with a little bit of royal icing, or if you're going to put a little bit of a royal icing scallop around the edge, you can fill it in with that, or you can just fill it in with royal icing and then put a ribbon around the bottom, which quite often is what just looks nice and simple, just a ribbon around the bottom. Depends on how confident you are doing the scallops and that sort of thing. So I priced up once to go on a day's course for royal icing, and I think it was £150 for the day. But that was including all your ingredients. I'm not sure whether it included, you wouldn't have used an actual real cake, because they have dummy cakes which are polystyrene, and you just decorate the polystyrene cake for practice. So that's what you tend to do on a class. You take a polystyrene. I didn't go. I just didn't have the time to do it. It was a full Saturday, I think. Or no, it might have been 2 days actually. About a day and a half, and I just didn't have the time to do it, and I've never done it. Might do it when I retire in about 10 years' time. I think my hands will be too knackered by then to be doing cakes at all, because it's quite tying on your hands, you know, your hands get sore. So you can see I've got a little bit of a gap there, but that's not going to be a problem, because I will just fill that in, and my icing has cracked a little bit there, so just smooth it out a little bit, it'll be fine. Might not have been warm enough. You've got to get your fondant icing very warm, really. I think I might not have needed it long enough. And there's no heating on either. But saying that, when I'm doing cakes I get too hot and bothered, so I wasn't bothered about the heating. So that is more or less how you ice a Christmas cake. I've got a bit of fluff in there. You can cover that up with all sorts. But that's more or less how you do a cake. You can do exactly the same with your fondant icing on a sponge cake for a birthday cake. So you just have to make sure that your sponge is quite firm and that you start your cake the day before. So if you're going to put jam in, just put a thin layer of jam, put your sponge layers on and on, leave it for overnight with a lid on so it just gets settled and firm, and then the following day use a bit of butter icing, and you just put a very, very thin layer of butter icing around your cake and on the top, roll out your fondant icing and put it on the same way. But sponge cake, that is very delicate and you've got to be very, very gentle doing it, so you might struggle with that a little bit, but it looks nice, and when you've done it yourself it's so much nicer because you know you've done it, so it's good. I'll just show you a couple of ones that I've done so far, because that is literally very basic at the moment. If you tangled up. So this is one that I finished Saturday, it's Friday I finished this one. So this is just got a little very simple ribbon around the outside. I tend to save ribbons when I get things, say like pyjamas, and they've got a really nice ribbon fastened around them. I put that in my ribbon box. I've got a really big box of ribbon and that's all I use really, but this one is actually a Christmas ribbon and it says Merry Christmas on the bottom, and I put Joy to the World. So that's for Heather's mother-in-law. So that's to go down to Devon this next week. And just show them this. And then for my mother-in-law, she's got dementia, my mother-in-law, so she's gone very childlike, but she loves Mary and Joseph, so I've done little figures. So I've just done them on a cocktail stick. So actually the cocktail stick needs to come with it. Let me just put that back in. And so then they'll just sit on top of the cake, and I've got a crib at home with baby Jesus in it. I've made those out of icing, yeah, but they're made out of fondant icing, but I've put Tylo powder in them, which is like a setting powder, so it makes them go really hard. And so you just colour the bits of icing that you want, and you just make them up, and just a flesh coloured ball for his head, and do his hands and noses, and just decorate, clothe them with coloured fabric, coloured icing. And then once they've set after about a week, you can just put them on your cake. So that's it. That's how to ice a marzipan Christmas cake.